Hey guys, Colm Kelly here from OTI Media. Welcome back to the Learning to Dad show, the show that brings you on my journey as I head towards parenthood. On today's show, I'm joined by my good friend Ryan McDowell. We're going to talk through a number of interesting topics, including what's the one thing that you missed from your pre-parent life? And of course, you can hit me up in the comment section below this video and let me know what the thing is that you reminisce back about. Is it a thing that made it very, very simple? Is it a nice thing that you used to do? Let me know in the comment section below as to what you missed from pre-parent life, and then help me to be able to be ready for that change in my life. So let's get straight into the show, and of course, hit that subscribe button. Welcome in, guys. Welcome back to this edition. It is the fourth edition of the Learning to Dad show, the show bringing you on my journey as I head here towards parenthood, and it's coming up very, very quickly. You may hear it in my voice on today's show, a little bit of a cold going on, so I'm going to battle through, bring the entertainment your way, and help myself. There is no end in my quest to get this advice that I need to get before I become a parent. So we're going to battle on. I'm joined today by my good buddy Ryan McDowell, and as you can see, we're also joined by my cast of characters here behind, which is growing on each edition of the show. A lot of new teddies coming in here all around the place. We have names for certain ones of them. You know, we have Paddington and Trunks, but there's a couple of them here that I need some names for, so maybe hit us up in the comments below. There's a couple of kind of Australian or New Zealand acquaintances that have joined in, and my parents were on vacation, and some of those have made their way back here into the set. So always trying to add pieces, so if you have any names, hit us up in the comment section below. And again, like any of the topics in today's show, if you have any thoughts on them, any comments, hit us up in that comment section below, and of course, hit that subscribe button. So let's get to it. Ryan, how are you doing today, my man?
I'm doing well. How are you, man?
I'm doing good. Outside of the cold, very, very happy to have you on board on the show, and very happy to see what advice we can have and provide a little bit of entertainment for the viewers and the listeners along the way. So we're going to get it kicked off, and we've started off all the other shows kind of, with a lot of fun questions. But before we get into that, last show I got myself caught out a little because I jumped straight into a question with Mike Tagliere, and I asked him about his family being of 3, and it actually turned out the family was of 4. This should all be done pre-production, I guess, but can we have a little bit of a background on your family, the family size in terms of how many kids you have and the ages of those kids before I get myself caught out again?
Sure. We are a party of 5. So my wife and I have 3 children. Jace, our oldest, is 10. Maggie is 8, and then Grayson is 4.
So a nice little gap there. So a lot of experience going all the way from 10 down to 4, as you mentioned. And Maggie in the middle there, my mother, if she's listening in, will be very happy to hear that. Her name's Margaret, so I'm sure that'll bring delight to her to have a very similar name on the show today. So when we talked through all the other shows and we looked through them, we've kind of started off on a more serious note, but I'm going to get straight into it with a kind of silly question to start this one off. I send over the questions to all the guests prior to it, and there's kind of a short list of questions, and they get to pick which one they want, and then I get to put them in whatever order I want. So the first question up here is, out of all the 7 dwarves, we've been talking a lot of Disney on the show. I'm representing Mickey Mouse again today. And when we look through it, all the Disney characters, one of the most famous of all time is, of course, Snow White and the 7 dwarves. But those 7 dwarves, a lot of people can be categorized into one of those 7 dwarves as to what their personality type is and what their personality traits might represent. What have we got from Mr. Ryan McDowell?
Yeah, well, we can definitely talk Disney all day. I think a lot of people know that my wife is a Disney vacation planner. Adam Harstad over at Football Guys, he keeps joking that the 2 of us should start some type of Disney podcast. So we can skip the football talk and skip the dad talk and just talk Disney if you want.
No, I have no problem because I followed advice from you for the time we went over on our honeymoon over to Disney World in Orlando, and I've seen on your Twitter timeline that you've been there on numerous occasions since, along with the family. So a lot of experience in the McDowell household with the Disney planning. I guess when we're on, if you want, you can give a little shout out to the planning business if you want. Yeah,
absolutely. Erin McDowell. And her agency is Glass Slipper Concierge. So hit her up, and if you're a fantasy footballer and you book your trip through her, then I'll buy you a subscription to DLF for a year. So that's a little bit of incentive. But I mentioned my oldest son Jace was 10. I think he has been to Disney 10 times. So that's kind of the pace that we're on, at least since kids have been around. But as far as the 7 dwarfs, again, my wife would say probably Sneezy is the one that I would most relate to, just because of those fun seasonal allergies. In Kentucky, they hit me pretty hard, and I do tend to sneeze a lot when that happens. But I don't know. Lately, in the day job world, I'm maybe feeling a little more like grumpy. That's probably the one I most relate to right now.
Yeah, well, I probably relate more to sneezy right now because I don't tend to sneeze a lot. My sinuses tend to give me a lot of trouble because I don't sneeze, and over the last kind of 4 or 5 days, I've just been sneezing pretty much constantly. But like you mentioned, if it's in a work-related environment, people might say I'm probably bouncing from one side of happy to, as you mentioned, grumpy. We probably bounce between them all, and on today's show, though, we'll try and stay on the happy side of things, and I'll try and keep sneezy out of it as well, and hopefully your allergies aren't playing up at the moment, Ryan. But when we look then moving, when we look then at families, yours obviously with 3 kids, a lot of things can become very customary or traditional. Is there any things that have come into the McDowell household, either that you've taken on from your family or your wife's family and have now made into a family tradition of your own?
Sure. I think, again, probably Disney-related traditions of just making so many trips down there, and whether you want to call them traditions or habits, just kind of the way we do that vacation. But then other traditions, certainly like Christmas and those holidays. We always put up the Christmas tree the day after Thanksgiving. That's always a big deal, of course, to the children, to the kids. Just those normal things, going around to the local neighborhoods and looking at Christmas lights. That has ended up almost just on accident becoming kind of the same day each year. So I think that's probably how a lot of traditions get started in families, is just randomly doing something one time and then the next year remembering that and doing it again at that same time.
Yeah, you mentioned as well, like if you're taking the family on a vacation to Disneyland, that's a pretty sweet tradition. So I'll definitely say that's a good tradition to have. And like you mentioned, traditions. I meant your oldest child now 10 years old, and traditions tend to build over time, obviously. And it might start off, when the child is 6 and might move on. If you plan a tradition, I find that it tends not to happen. If you think, right, we'll do this every year, it tends not to happen. Like you mentioned, kind of just happens naturally and organically over time. So we'll see what else comes forward. But that Disney one so far, I think of all the traditions I've heard on the show, is I think it's the best one so far, I have to say, going to Disneyland. And I've been there only the one time, but I can't wait till my kids are old enough to go. The problem with me is, it's that 10-hour flight from Dublin to Orlando makes things not that easy when we're doing that. When we look then at, I guess we'll get into some fun stories with the kids, and, heading down to Disney is bound to be one of those ones that there's bound to be a lot of stories to tell.
Oh yeah, I'm sure we have some stories. Again, my oldest, when he was around, I guess he was 3 and really having some trouble potty training, and just refused to do it. And I'm sure a lot of parents have dealt with those struggles. But we finally just did the bully thing. We just threatened him: "You're not going to Disney World unless you go on the potty, unless you will take care of this and do this." So we always drive. We don't fly to Disney. It's about a 15-hour drive for us, and we do that all in one day. So we took the little trainer potty, and that was in the car. So we had a lot more stops that day or that trip than we normally did, because he knew we were serious. And he did it. So he potty trained himself on the way to Disney World.
He was hoping that you didn't just decide halfway along that journey, get to the 7.5-hour point and decide, yeah, no, we're not going, we're heading back. And, you mentioned 15 hours, obviously doing that now with 3 kids. Is that something that is difficult to do, or are the kids relatively well behaved? I can imagine that is a tough one. Maybe you have it mastered, and you can share that advice with all the listeners and myself.
Yeah. I think it's probably easier now than it would have been when we were younger, just thanks to technology. We have the DVD player in the van, like prototypical family, and then all the kids have their screens or tablets or whatever they might have. So it might not be the best. I don't know if we're building memories like we did when we were kids, but yeah, they're pretty well behaved. They're pretty quiet. Even Grayson at 4 years old, this will be his, I believe, his 4th trip this summer. So he's pretty used to it as well.
And just I guess when the kids are going, is there ever a time when they don't look forward to heading down to Disney? Do they think, "Oh, we've been there before"?
Oh no. That's me. I'm the one in the family that has some doubts or some reservations about each trip. But no, my wife and the kids are always ready.
So when we mentioned the Disney side of it, maybe it's not Disney related. Is there any stories outside of Disney to do with the kids and potty training? Something that I'm trying to read as much as I can about and figure out. It is still a couple of years or a year or two down the line, so I'm going to try and get as much information on that as I can. But from any parent that I've talked to, that seems to be the one that can be the hardest to get used to.
Yeah, that's difficult for sure, and I usually just leave it up to my wife, which is the story which is the case with a lot of things.
I'm taking that note. I'm going to take that note, save this video, and pass that along to my wife to see how.
Yeah. See if that'll work with her as well. But yeah, I was thinking about some funny stories as I was getting ready for the show, and again, I thought of my oldest son, Jace, and this is probably. It's several years ago. He was probably in 1st or 2nd grade. We were in the car, just the two of us, and as I often do, I was listening to a fantasy football podcast, and it was actually the Bull Rush podcast, which I'm now
self-promotion,
right? A little bit of self-promotion. I'm now one of the co-hosts on, but this was a few years ago. So I was listening to Frank and Scott and Ty and the guys, and if you've listened to that show, then sometimes. Especially Frank is apt to use some colorful language.
It's not PG at times.
Right. So I'm listening to this podcast with my probably 7 or 8 year old in the car at the time, and Frank drops a couple of words that cause me to quickly turn the radio off. So I turn it off. We're not listening anymore, and Jace automatically says, "Daddy, why did you turn off your show?" And I'm trying to explain and be honest, but also kind of paint a rosier picture than what it was. And I just said there were some words that we don't really need to hear right now, and we won't listen. And so he starts asking more and more, what words were they, and things like that. And I'm trying to brush over all of this. And I finally said, if you're hearing things at school, or if you're just wondering about things, if there's anything you ever want to ask me, you can ask me. We'll talk about it. And that's the way we'll learn and go from here. And he said, "Okay, there is something I've really been wondering about." And so now I'm getting nervous. I'm wondering, how bad could it be? He's in 2nd grade. What could he have heard? And I said, "Okay, what is it?" And he said, "What are folders for?" And I said, "Folders?" And he said, "Yeah, like everybody has folders. What are they for?" And I said, just to hold papers. That's all they're for. And so that was a lot more innocent of a conversation than I thought I was going to have. But that's one that sticks with me.
I'm sure you just wiped the sweat of your brow at that could have been a very, very awkward conversation, and really dodged a bullet on that one. When you look, maybe it was watching TV shows with explicit language and not having to worry about kids hearing it, but pre-having kids, is there anything from back in the day, I guess we'll call it the good old days, is there anything that you missed from before having kids that you think sometimes, oh, that'd be nice to do, or that'd be nice outside of going to Disneyland?
Yeah, that's true. I don't know, probably I guess just the spontaneity of being able to pretty much do whatever you want, whenever you want. Even going out to dinner with the wife or going to a movie, those things have become a little more difficult, just depending on, I guess, what your babysitter situation is. Ours is pretty tough. As far as finding a sitter. So yeah, that would probably be the thing that I miss the most.
Yeah, we've had a few mention. I think Scott mentioned that as well. Scott Fish, when he was on, mentioned the possibility of going to the go to the cinema, going to the films is a lot more difficult. And we mentioned when he was on that he was going to if he got a day to go to the cinema, he was going to two shows in one day. So really packing in as much as he can when he gets the opportunity. But that is a common theme that I've heard, whether it's on the show or whether it's just talking to people in general, looking for advice, that getting that the spontaneity to just head off and do something, head to the beach, head to do something, go shopping. One of the more interesting ones is that if you're just heading for something simple like heading down to the shop to buy some bread, can become a huge task. So that's something that I'm trying to prepare myself for. Is that something that you agree with, that the very simple task becomes a monumental task?
It can be, for sure. Early, when our kids, when they were much younger and they first came around, it seemed like we would do everything as a family. We would, if we needed to go to the grocery, everybody would go, or go to, just run some simple errands like you mentioned. And as the years have gone on, that has become, mom will go or I will go. And I actually find myself volunteering for some of those things a lot more often than I might have before kids. I'll go to the store. No, I'll go by myself. It's okay. And just getting a little quiet time as a teacher, a third grade teacher, and Jace and Maggie, my two oldest, both go to the same school where I work. So they ride in to work with me, ride home from work with me, and obviously I'm around children all day. There's not really much time away from kids in my life, so I'll take the opportunity when it presents itself.
Yeah, I was going to ask you that, being a teacher, and then obviously when your kids at home, that time if you get to go to the store on your own is bound to be just a little bit of a relief. You can just have time to yourself. So I guess that's a good way to go about it. Having to obviously be a teacher prior to having kids, do you think that there helped you in terms of spending time around the children to have your own kids, or do you think that was a hindrance because you kind of could see what was coming?
Yeah, I think it probably helped, just kind of having those, building those relationships with kids. I've taught third grade pretty much my entire career, for about 15 years or so in third grade. So obviously 8 or 9 year olds are different than those newborns, but especially as my kids grew up and things that I had seen in my students, even just knowing when kids do things, when kids learn to do this, that development piece was helpful.
Yeah, that's interesting. I hadn't thought about that prior, but it's definitely something that I think that you're able to gauge kind of ahead of time what your child's development is going to be, and when the different changes will come as to what they're going to change in attitude and so on and so forth. So when we talked with Mike in the last one, he was talking about his daughter, now 15, and she's getting more into getting older, looking up makeup tutorials and so on. So you can see kind of down the line as to what's coming along. I guess we'll start off. I like to always go, I don't know, what do you want to do first? The positive or the negative? Which one do you want to go with? I like to go with the negative first, so you get the positive after, but you can tell me which way to go.
Okay. No, you're steering the ship.
Right. So we'll go for the negative first. What is the worst thing about being a parent? I always like to get the worst thing out of the way.
Well, I wouldn't say this is the worst.
Yeah, and we're saying worst, and it's not. It doesn't have to be a really bad thing. Obviously, all the children in the McDowell household are perfectly well behaved.
Oh yeah, all the time, all the time. I've been pretty open with our situation on Twitter. Grayson, our youngest, does have Down syndrome, and that in itself, I would never call the worst. He's awesome, and we love him, and he's just great. But hearing that news before he was born, that was tough. And we didn't know what to expect, and we had doctors basically telling us the worst about things he would never be able to do, or procedures he would have, and life expectancy and things like this before he was even born. So, and then friends and family who were obviously trying their best to be supportive, but what we mostly heard was, I'm sorry, I'm sorry,
Yeah,
I'm sorry. And so that was a challenging time. And once he arrived, once he was born, he was born a month early. So on top of Down syndrome, which we knew, and he also had he was born with multiple heart defects, which we knew that was going to happen as well. He was also 1 month premature. So as soon as he arrived, everything since then has been great. He has undergone multiple surgeries, including open heart surgery at 4 weeks old. So I would say that was the worst. Just watching him and kind of going through that, and obviously worrying about how that would go. But everything that he has gone through as far as those medical pieces have been successful, and now he's just a normal 4-year-old growing up. He's going to kindergarten in the fall, and everything's great. But pieces of that experience were definitely the worst that we've dealt with.
Obviously, as well, when I think in general, when people hear things, they think of the worst things. And like you mentioned, people saying they're sorry, but and same with doctors, when they're trying to say things, they say, the negative. But I'm sure in your experience, you've seen all the positives that have come out of it. And, do you think that when people talk like that, they really should have a different mindset as to, what they're looking at and what they're talking about?
Well, I think so. I mean, as far as the medical professionals, they just have to present the facts, regardless if it's viewed as a positive or a negative. My wife points this out all the time, and I think this is one great thing about how our marriage works, is that she, regardless of the situation, if it's something serious like that or really anything, she tends to focus on and hear the positive, while I'm more of the worry, or I hear the bad news. So we would leave a doctor's appointment and really almost have a debrief of, she's telling me her point of view, I'm telling her what I heard, and we're meeting in the middle somewhere. Yeah. So as far as friends and family, we did have some friends who told us congratulations after we heard that news. I think most people just don't know how to react. Obviously they want to comfort you, or they want to show that they care. And sadly, most people do view that news as bad news. And we did for a time as well, until we met Grayson, and then, everything was better then.
Yeah, no, you wouldn't change it at all now. And I guess, that was a positive story on that side of the conversation. And now the best thing about being a parent, and you can wrap that all up whatever way you want to roll with it.
Sure. Well, there's certainly a lot of positives to come from Gray's story in general. But I would say overall, with all three of my kids, just kind of seeing them find their own thing. When kids are 3 or 4, you put them in everything there is: soccer and baseball and dance and scouts and whatever it might be. And we tried that with my son. We signed him up for everything. And then finally, when he was 6 or 7, probably, he kind of decided it was baseball that was his passion. So now we kind of focus on that with him. But not that we tried to force those things down his throat, but we just offer him opportunities, and kind of seeing him naturally pick one of those was great. My daughter was not so easy. We signed her up for all those things as well. She didn't last very long with most of them, especially the sports related ones. She didn't care anything about that. I remember we said, Maggie, what do you want to do? You can do soccer or dance or gymnastics or cheerleading or whatever. What do you want to do? And she said, I just want to stay home and watch movies on the iPad. So that was her response. But she's finally, she's a little bit of an artist, so she does some art things, and she does do a little dance class now. So seeing her kind of find her thing as well. And And I'm sure as Grayson continues to grow up, he'll identify what his main interests are. So really just seeing them kind of find their own way, really.
And when you look at things, it's like anything in life, Ryan. I'm sure you'll say when your children as well. You mentioned them finding their own thing. I remember when I was young, if I was ever forced to do something, attended that I didn't like it, you grow to dislike it. And if you like something, you tend to go and want to do more of it. So, like you said, if you just kind of give them the options and see what they do, I think that's something that I'm going to try and take into my parenting style to see. Obviously, you have to have. Don't let them run everything run over you, but you have to have that other side where they have the option to pick those things. And I think that's a very good thing to say, especially when, like, you have a sample size of 3 children and there's such differences between all 3 and what they like and their likes and dislikes. I'm in a household where it's just me and my brother, and I see the differences between the 2 of us having grown up together. So there's a lot of differences in what your likes will be, what your interests will be, what your hobbies will be. And I think that's a good piece of advice there. And we've got to the portion now where this here could be, its own separate show talking about Disney. Obviously, in your household, there's going to be a huge portion of this. I tried to start with the Disney, going to have the Disney then. I didn't want it to just be all Disney all the way through. But when we look at it, Disney films is, some of the recent stuff has been just awesome. Like, Moana, I thought was fantastic. There's just been a lot of good stuff that come out. I was very impressed as well with the Jungle Book when they remastered the Jungle Book as well. I thought it was a fantastic one. But when you look through all the different recent kind of either cartoons or motion pictures of any kind, or maybe it's not even a Disney film and it's something that's just on the TV at the minute, what is the go-to in the McDowell household, or is it spread different between the 3 as the 3 at the different ages of their development?
Yeah, we kind of go through cycles. It was definitely Moana for a while. My daughter's a big Stitch fan, so anything with that character in there, we watch. I guess the latest one is actually kind of going a little old school. It's Mary Poppins. That's what they've been watching, and that's probably. I don't know if I had to pick a favorite Disney movie, that would probably be it. I know they've been remaking all of the kind of all those classics. Yeah. And I know that's, I don't know if it's next in line, but I know that's coming down the pipe at some point is an updated Mary Poppins. So we're looking forward to that. That's probably the go-to in our house right now, though.
That is going really, really old school. That's I remember even when I was a kid, I think that had been out previous to me watching it the first time. My kids want to mention a few times on the show has been The Lion King, and you mentioned the remakes there, and the Lion King coming out as a remake in the next couple of years. So that's another one that I'm going to be interested in. Is there any other elements of advice that you think that somebody like myself heading in for the first time, kind of almost blindfolded, trying to figure it all out here on the fly? And I say that I hope I'm behind the scenes have a lot more information than I'm letting on here. But is there any other advice that you'd have for a first time parent as they roll up here and looking now at just over 6 weeks? And you mentioned with Grayson coming 1 month early. if something happens to come early here, it could be even less than that. So we'll see how we go on the time scale. 9th of April, the due date. So anything there that I can jot down in my notebook as to what I should be doing?
I don't know as far as advice. I just kind of felt like I really just wanted to learn through experience. And obviously we had some good role models, whether it was our own parents or friends of ours who had already gone through that and already had kids of their own. But, we did some of the classes, and maybe you and your wife have done some of those as well through the hospital or local.
Zero so far. We plan on doing them, but we're at 0 at the moment.
Stick with 0. We did a couple of classes, but not many, and I didn't read any books. Maybe I should have. Maybe the behavior in the house would be better if I had. But we pretty much just kind of learned as we went, and that's worked for us. Yeah,
no, I think, and basically because of the industry we're in with the fantasy football, doing podcasts and doing some video work, it just morphed into an idea for me to do this. And I'm just trying to make it fun for people like doing the show, for me doing the show, and for people watching the show. And hopefully I will take some things away. There has been quite a good few different pieces of information that I've taken away from it. But like you said, you kind of try and take all the stuff from your own childhood, from what you see other people do, and blend them all in and try and make your own kind of recipe for parenthood. And I think that's the way we're rolling with it. But you mentioned the classes. The plan is to do a couple of them, but some people say they're great, some people say they're not so great. So it's all about just figuring it all out. And when it comes, it's just going to be one big whirlwind. But, the last question I have for you, Ryan, is when we look all the way back to your childhood, you mentioned when we were at a younger age that we didn't have the iPads to go with, and there was a lot of different, there was nearly no technology back in the day. There's people probably watching this on YouTube, and, if you show them the old school TVs with the big thick back on the back of them, they'd be wondering, what is that? Like, so certain things that children see now and they just have absolutely no ideas. And, sometimes things like folders can be really, really complicated to understand as well. But
evidently, yeah.
When we look back at Ryan and when he was a young fella, what was your envision of what you wanted to be, your dream when you grew up? And was it to be a teacher? Did we get there?
Yeah, it was to be a teacher, actually. I feel like I knew pretty early on that I wanted to be a teacher, and that just carried all through, high school and college, and now 19 years later, still here. Now that grumpy part is playing a factor. So I don't know if this will last the rest of my career or not. But so far that's how it played out.
Yeah, so far so good, and I'm sitting here, 29, about to have this child, and still figuring out where we're going down the line. So, the dream, right. the dream still lives on. We'll see where we get to. But it's been a lot of fun talking to Ryan about his family, about what I should be trying to take on. There's some good advice I've taken on. If there's anything that you find interesting in the show that you want to discuss a little bit more, you can hit us up in those comments section below. You can follow Ryan on Twitter at RyanMac23, and I guess as we have the floor here, Ryan, is there anything coming up over the off season in terms of your work that you want to share in case there is people looking in here?
Sure. We're just doing a lot of work with the 2018 rookie class, a little bit different version of 2018 rookies, not the 2018 rookie that we've been discussing here today, but we'll do that over at Dynasty League Football. And then, I have plenty of podcasts, Dynasty Blueprint, DLF Dynasty Podcast, and the Bull Rush, as I mentioned.
Yeah, and we that's the second mention of the Bull Rush on this show, but we did mention I've said that there's going to be no football talk on this, so we did just let that little snippet creep in there at the end. And for the listeners who have no idea what rookie picks are, that is in the NFL, the new players coming in are rookies, and of course the number one rookie pick this year is going to be on the Kelly team here. We'll see how that goes, and obviously we're looking forward to that one. And it's actually around the very same time as the NFL draft, so should all coincide, and maybe I'll have some Twitter jokes to come that way as well. So thanks again for watching in on another edition here of the Learning to Dad show. Hopefully you've enjoyed what you've heard. Hopefully you're going to hit that subscribe button. Don't forget to make sure you spread the word of this show. We're having a lot of fun recording these, and hopefully you're having a lot of fun listening and watching and enjoying them, as the content will continue to grow as the baby comes along. There'll be videos on what I have learned in real life, putting that real life practicalities into work. I'm sure that's going to be a lot of good entertainment as well, and maybe not for me, maybe not entertaining on my side, but for you it should be very, very entertaining. So any ideas you have for shows, what you'd like me to do, any pre-baby videos that you think would be a good idea, maybe some post-video baby videos that you'd like to see me do personally, send them here, put them in the comments below, or hit me up on Twitter at Overtime Ireland. Let me know your ideas. I'm all ears, and it's always going to be a lot of fun doing them. So hopefully you've enjoyed this one. As I mentioned, hit that subscribe button, come back for the next one, and until then, have a good one.